Welcome back to Exotic Car Playplace. Glad to see you guys around for another episode on this wonderful Sunday morning of Car News is Our News. We are going to share with you great new information on some awesome drivers' cars. That's right, performance cars coming up in 2020 and 2021. We'll share information on the newest Corvette, the Z06. After all, the Stingray is old news. It's on the doorsteps of new owners. There's another version coming around the corner. We'll also talk about the new Shelby GT500 as well as BMW's new 4 Series. We'll get into more detail and specific information on models that you might see around that car. And we'll talk about the new Toyota Supra. After all, there are some new versions of the Supra coming out and some information you will want to know about as well, because cars are mechanical by nature. We're going to share with you some information on recalls associated with some of these cars, because after all, cars are never perfect. So let's get into it now. So let's get into the new updates on the Corvette. Now that the UAW strike is over, Bowling Green, Kentucky manufacturing facility has started to pump out and manufacture and send out the new Stingray. Now that the old C7s are no longer in production, the C8 Stingrays are now starting to land on doorsteps of excited new owners. With that said, Corvette now is starting to work on the new Z06. You can expect it to be an absolute McLaren killer, this car. Mid-engine, huge power. There's going to be some really great changes. It's going to have Z06 deckling. It's going to sit slightly lower, larger wheels. There's talk about a unique fin on the back as well as a front lip and side skirts that will look unique for the Z06. So the new C7 Stingray actually utilizes a 5.5 liter flat plane crank V8, which produces its 500 horsepower and mass amounts of torque. It's a very torquey engine. But the new Z06 promises to use a highly modified version of a similar engine, and you would expect it to see over 800 horsepower. As I said, I would expect it to be in that McLaren 720S killing territory. This car will be spectacular. The next great news, of course, some of you guys have already seen it. Some of these cars have been trickling into the dealerships already, and that is the brand new 2020 Shelby GT500, the Ford Mustang GT500, which now is a step up from the 350, which in itself was an amazing car. The GT350 utilized a normally aspirated 5.2 liter V8 flat plane crank engine, which was just a great engine, revved to the moon and had tons of power. Now the new GT500 takes it to an entirely new stratosphere with supercharging slapped onto that wonderful 5.2 liter V8, and it has a massive 760 horsepower. This, in a technical sense, will dominate anything that came out in previous modern muscle car eras, from the Dodge and the Chevys. This will do it all right, because it also comes with a dual clutch transmission, which is entirely new for these types of cars. 0 to 60? You betcha, barely 3.3 seconds. It is an absolute animal. It will be exciting to see. Can't wait to get behind the wheel of one of these new GT500s. Maybe take a look at your local Ford dealer, because not only are they fast, but they're wonderful to look at. So let's move right along to BMW. And how about the new 4 Series? There's been lots of talk about it because BMW's been really working on styling elements. And one of the key components is the kidney grills. Now, a lot of the design elements from this car is expected to follow the M8 or the 8 Series cars. Very long and sleek. You're going to find a design very sleek and sporty looking, with interesting creases and accents on the hood and the roofline. Of course, the headlights are expected to be quite dramatically different, and there'll be lots of different options for engine configurations. If the new X7 and 7 Series vehicles and their oversized grills are any indication, I would expect to see something similar in this new 4 Series. But with that said, now they are flirting with poor sales. I mean, after all, that's a shrinking market. The two-door coupes is a tougher playground. There's far less demand for it, and there's many manufacturers creating really great cars, so you have to do something unique. That's probably a good thing, because some extra styling elements that take the car outside of its normal comfort zone and make your car stand out of a crowd. So expect to see this following the 3 Series in terms of technology, the iDrive system, the dashboard, the first 4 Series coming out sometime in the fall here of 2020. Let's start with the M4, 480 horsepower, and of course, if you look at extending out to the competition version, there's rumors it'll have well over 500, 510, 520 horsepower in that range. There may be even a 340D, but I wouldn't expect that to see in North America. Possibly in Europe, there may be a diesel version. After all, the diesel engines have received a lot of negative press these days. But for those people that like the little softened vanilla versions of these cars, There may be a base model, a 430, as well as a 430e, which is ultimately a hybrid version of this car as well. So moving on to the next great story, and that is the new Toyota Supra. Well, Toyota has some great cars. They have the Supra and they have that new 86 that you would expect to show up as well. But not just that, with the Supra, of course we all know they have the straight six, the 3-liter turbocharged engine that comes from BMW that produces 335 horsepower in turbocharged form. Well, guess what? They're talking about coming out with a 4-cylinder version for those people that want a slightly simpler mode of transportation but still like the styling elements. So the new 4-cylinder engine is a little bit less powerful, but it's lighter too, at about 220 pounds lighter than the 3-liter 6-cylinder version. It will promise to have power numbers around 255 horse and about 295 pound-feet, which would suggest a very torquey engine. A little bit lacking in horsepower, but it'll have more than enough tractable power to move that car along. It would likely suggest a better opportunity for a daily driver. So expect a car that's extremely well balanced, at literally a perfect 50-50 weight distribution. There will also be an opportunity for an A91 Special Edition in blue. That will be available too if you want something a little bit more unique, possibly around the corner. Because there will only be about 1,000 of those versions, you will likely guaranteed to have something a bit different than the rest of the guys next door. So another thing you can expect from Toyota Supra is the GR version, or more of a track-ready version of the 3-liter Turbo 6, which gives it an increase of 47 horsepower above the standard car, and now you can expect 382 horsepower and about 368 pound-feet of torque, which is more in line with the Z4 and what you'll find in the M40i in the BMW cars. This car will have a retuned active differential and some suspension work, so you can expect overall increased track performance, better grip, acceleration, handling, brakes. The whole thing will be a much better package. So now there's a third car in this group of Supras. Essentially, you've got the 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, and now they have a lower cost price point car called the 86. The beauty is, the rumor has it, the 86 will likely be available with a manual gearbox for those people like to roll the gears. Sadly, the 6-cylinder Supra will never likely be offered with a manual. That's been more or less confirmed by the people in Toyota. So how about some pricing? So the 86 is expected to come out around 27 grand, $40,000 for the 4-cylinder, and about $50,000 for the base 3-liter Supra. So as great as these cars are, unfortunately they aren't exempt from recalls from time to time. And these cars, these new Supras, are actually built by BMW. So BMW was very quick to respond to some recalls and some deficiencies related to these cars already. There's been actually 3 separate recalls for these new Supras. One of the recalls is a backup camera that failed to work, and that came out back in October sometime. A second recall for the Supra was an actual inadequate weld which was made to anchor down the seatbelt retainers. Unfortunately, in an accident, there was a risk that that could break and release and not hold the passenger back from flying out of the car in a collision. So BMW / in this case Toyota took ownership of this and actually only had to address 7 cars that had this seatbelt weld issue. So anyway, that's more or less taken care of. So now there's a third recall that impacts these new Toyota Supras, and that has to do with the headlight system. It ultimately means the headlights possibly could fail. You could be driving along late at night through some twisty dark back roads in the country where there's no lights, and all of a sudden, poof, your lights go out. Talk about a safety hazard. That is extreme safety hazard. So with all of this said, about 177 Toyota Supras had to go back to the dealer for direct repair or replacement. And there was also some BMWs from the Z4 and the 330i that also needed the attention. Ultimately, what it means is the dealer will inspect the headlight control unit, the actual brains of the operation, for failure. If it is, they'll probably replace it. If not, it's an inspection at the very least. So sorry, there's always 1 or 2 of these recalls hanging in the wings. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for sticking around to the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click on the link up here. That's my last week's video on the Lexus news of the day. As well, if you just want to join the channel, click the subscribe button as well as the little notifications bell. It's going to let you know when the next great video pops up. Hope to see you guys real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.